All right. Welcome in, everyone, to another Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at, well, a pretty significant player in the Indian stock market. We're talking about Infosys, ticker symbol INFY. Infosys, yeah. And we've got some market insights here. But our real mission today is to kind of figure out why this company, why it holds so much weight in the market.
Yes.
And why it's considered, I guess, a pretty attractive option for investors, right? Like, why should people care about Infosys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Infosys is a name that comes up quite often when we're talking about the Indian IT sector, and for good reason. I think, to really start to understand it, you have to look at just how big and how broad this company really is. So we're talking about a multinational corporation, and they provide a whole range of services, from consulting to technology to outsourcing.
Okay, so it's like not just one thing that they do.
No, not at all. I mean, they work with all sorts of businesses across different industries. And they help those businesses through what's called their digital transformation journey, right? So maybe they're moving from older systems to newer systems, or they're just trying to improve their IT infrastructure, or they need some high-level strategic guidance, right? All sorts of things. And what's interesting is they were founded all the way back in 1981. So they were right there at the very beginning, at the forefront of the Indian IT services industry.
1981, wow. So they've really seen it all, haven't they? Like the whole evolution of tech in India.
They've seen it all, and they've been a big part of shaping it, too, actually. They've consistently been a driver of innovation, always adapting to whatever the new technology demands are. And it's interesting, their shares are actually traded on both the Bombay Stock Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. So they're dual listed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so they have access to a really broad range of investors and capital globally. I mean, you really can't talk about the Indian IT sector without talking about Infosys. They're kind of one of the main pillars there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got this big company, long history, but what about their stock? I mean, that's what a lot of people are going to be interested in, right? How has it performed?
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, I mean, generally speaking, their stock has had a pretty steady growth pattern, especially in recent years. And one of the things that's really notable about Infosys is how resilient it is. Even when the market gets volatile and has those big swings, it seems like they're able to kind of maintain that upward trajectory.
So they've been able to, weather the storms and keep growing, even when things are kind of shaky.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for investors who have held on to their Infosys shares for a longer period of time, like maybe over the past 10 years, they've seen a pretty healthy return on investment. And this stability, this consistent growth, I think you can attribute that to a few things.
Like what? What would those things be?
Well, for one, they have very consistently strong quarterly earnings. They're always bringing in solid profits. And then they're known for paying out dividends very reliably, which, is always a good thing for investors who are looking for that steady income stream. And then underlying all of this is a strong, experienced leadership team. They've got a good management team in place that inspires confidence, so people feel good about where the company is going.
Yeah, I mean, if leadership is good and they're consistently making money, that makes investors feel more secure.
Absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to invest in a company that's losing money and has shaky leadership.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier about their global reach. Can you talk a little bit more about that? How important is that for them?
Oh, it's really significant, actually. So it's not just India. They've got a big footprint globally. They serve some pretty major clients in the U.S., in Europe, and in other regions as well. So that kind of geographical diversification is really important.
Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Exactly. So if one part of the world, if one economy is slowing down, they've got these other operations in other markets that are doing well, and that helps to balance things out.
So it's not like they're completely dependent on just the Indian market.
Oh, no, not at all. And having that global presence, it means they have a much wider base for generating revenue. Plus, they're really good at adapting to the changing technological needs globally. Think about the rising demand for cloud computing, for AI, for digital services. It's happening everywhere, and Infosys has positioned itself really well to take advantage of those trends.
So they're not stuck in the past with old technology.
Definitely not. They're very forward-looking. They're embracing and investing in all the cutting-edge areas. And another thing that indicates they're serious about future growth is their strategic partnerships and even acquisitions of other companies. They're not afraid to go out and make moves.
So it seems like they have a pretty full pipeline, huh? Lots of projects, lots of potential.
Yeah, definitely. And, that tends to boost investor confidence. People see a company that's active and that's looking ahead, and they feel more comfortable investing in them.
That makes sense. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, let's talk about investment. Would you say that Infosys is typically viewed as a long-term investment, or is it something that people trade more actively in the short term?
I'd say the general consensus, among analysts and investors is that Infosys is a really solid buy if you're looking for long-term growth. The emphasis is really on that slow and steady, consistent growth over time.
So it's probably not the kind of stock where you're going to see those huge overnight gains.
Probably not. It might not have the same kind of super rapid growth potential or the high risk, high reward that some other investments might have. But it's seen as a very dependable choice for people who are, more conservative investors who maybe prioritize stability in their portfolio and just that slow, steady appreciation of their investment.
Yeah, it's good to have a mix, right? Some high risk, high reward stuff, and then some things that are just kind of steady and reliable.
Absolutely. And, Infosys being seen as that safe, reliable investment, I think it's because their core business is so strong and they're a real leader in the IT sector.
Makes sense. Now, we've seen some ups and downs in the Indian stock market lately, right? Like some periods of volatility and uncertainty. So how has Infosys managed to navigate through all of that?
Well, one of the things that really helps them in times like that is their strong balance sheet. So basically that means they have a good, healthy level of assets compared to their liabilities. They've got that financial cushion, And because of that, they've been able to weather some of the recent challenges in the market better than a lot of other companies. Plus, like we were talking about before, that global push towards digital transformation, that's really benefited them. The demand for the services they offer has actually increased.
So it's almost like those periods of market uncertainty, they could actually be a good opportunity for investors who are looking at Infosys.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. I mean, those market fluctuations, they can create some really good entry points for investors who understand the company's strength and its potential for future growth. If you're thinking long term, then those temporary dips in the stock price can be a chance to buy shares at a more attractive price.
It's like buying something on sale, right?
Yeah, kind of. Okay, so we've talked a lot about their financial performance, but are there any other factors that make Infosys attractive to investors?
Okay, yeah, good point. It's not always just about the numbers.
Right. And in the case of Infosys, there's something else that's important. They've actually become a leader in corporate governance and in sustainability practices.
Okay, so can you explain what that means? What does that look like in practice?
Yeah, so corporate governance, it basically refers to how a company is run. It's the rules, the practices, the processes that they use to make decisions and to control the company. And when you have strong corporate governance, it means there's accountability and transparency. Investors like to see that. And then sustainability, in this context, it's about how they're operating in a way that's environmentally and socially responsible. Are they thinking about their impact on the world? And this is becoming more and more important for investors. There's a growing focus on ESG investing. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance.
So it's not just about the profits. It's about how those profits are being made.
Exactly. A lot of investors today, they want to put their money into companies that are doing things the right way. And Infosys has really shown a commitment to these principles, which makes them even more attractive to a lot of people.
Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, hey, maybe I should invest in Infosys. What are some key things they should be paying attention to? Like, how can they track the company's performance and get a sense of their future prospects?
Well, the quarterly earnings calls, those are really important to pay attention to. That's where the company shares its financial results, talks about any big new deals they've signed, and gives their outlook for the future. So those calls happen every quarter after the end of each financial quarter. And then, of course, you can always keep an eye out for any news about major new business deals or partnerships. Those are often good indicators of how the company is doing.
Yeah, it's like follow the money, right? See where they're getting their business from.
Exactly.
Okay, so to wrap things up here, what would you say is the main takeaway about Infosys for our listeners?
I think the big takeaway is that this is a company that's been around for a long time. They've got a proven track record, a good reputation, and they're positioned for some really strong long-term growth, especially with everything that's happening in the world of digital transformation.
So whether you already own some Infosys stock or you're just thinking about adding it to your portfolio,
it's definitely worth keeping an eye on. They're a solid company with a lot of potential, especially for investors who are in it for the long haul.
Absolutely. All right, well, that was a great deep dive into Infosys. Learned a lot. I hope you did too. But before we go, here's something for you all to think about. We've talked about how fast the IT sector is changing globally. So, what are some of the future technologies or maybe some big global events that you think could have a major impact on a company like Infosys? And how can you, as an investor, stay informed about all of that? Because if you want to make smart investment decisions, you got to stay ahead of the curve. Food for thought, right? Anyway, thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.